What is up, Watch fam? Happy Thursday, and welcome to this week's episode of ASKTNH. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and I am live on Instagram answering users' questions. Viewers, TNH Watch fam questions. So go ahead, follow us on Instagram right now so you can tune in for the next live and ask some questions yourself. Let's do it. Okay, so Lagernan3N just asked, do you think the 5711 is worth more than $50,000? Okay, for people who don't understand what the hell was just asked, do I think that the Patek Steel Nautilus is worth more than $50,000? I don't remember the retail. I remember at a time when these watches were trading in the mid-20s, and now I know that I've seen them listed between 48 and I think 55, 56, which is pretty whack if you ask me, which I guess I just answered the question, but let's talk about why for a second. Why do I think the Nautilus in steel is not worth $50,000? Because of the comps, because of what you can get for that money and how the 5711 pales in comparison. No dissing the Nautilus by any means, but 50 grand, it's just not worth that. I mean, a 3800, the smaller, little bit more vintage version of the Nautilus is what, 25 grand? This is double? I think not. It wasn't that long ago. I think even still till today, actually, the 3700, the original Nautilus, which is infinitely more valuable than the 5711, considering the proportions are basically the same, and it's not a really smaller version. I mean, it's a pretty damn it's the original. It's the original Nautilus, right? That watch is not worth 50 grand always. Those have traded in the 30s and 40s not that long ago. I mean, now you can find them in the 50s and 60s, but still, those watches, to my understanding, are not, I don't know how to say this, quickly, but the prices they're listed at are not really representative or reflective of the prices that they're selling at. It's like steel Daytonas right now, Bringing us to another topic, steel Daytonas. Guys, there is trouble in the watch industry. Holy pre-owned modern watch market, it's a bubble. Vintage is safe as shit. Vintage watches, and I don't mean every vintage watch. There are watches that are going to explode and people are going to lose a lot of money on, but vintage watches as a whole are going to, Jesus Christ, double in price, triple. There's so much to happen in the market, and they eventually will pop. But when the bubble does pop in vintage, it is still the equilibrium will still be significantly above where it is now, right? Datejust will be worth, much more than they are today, even after the pop, right? Same thing with Day-Dates, same thing with a really nice GMTs, modern GMTs, but this pre-owned bubble is whack. There are steel Daytonas, non-Zenith, just steel Daytonas being listed at $16,000, $17,000. These are watches that were had at 10 not very long ago. That's a big difference. That's a big, and it's not. I don't mean to say, if it was listed at 10, a couple months ago, it can't be at 16. Nothing has happened to that market to move it to 16, right? The watches themselves are not worth more. The ones being listed are being listed higher. Big difference there. And when you do what I do for a living, when you're literally, watching these markets every single day, stuff like this is extremely obvious. But unfortunately, to viewers, to watch geeks, you don't see all of them. You don't see the wholesaler saying, take my steel Daytona at 11. You see them retailing them at 18. Big difference. Like a dangerous difference. People are going to get in these watches really, really high, and I'm a big Rolex fan. I think that the watch is definitely worth 12, 13, 14, but to say it's worth 16, 17, 18, it's whack. It's just not true, and now once they are all trading at that number, even if I don't think that they're worth it, I get it. That's good, but they're playing like a smoke and mirrors game. It's kind of funny. I mean, I think it's fucked up, but and ultimately, what's going to be the demise here is when the retailers overinvest in these watches. Let's say the Daytona, use that for an example. They say, okay, I can acquire a bunch of these at 11. I can retail them at 16 and a half or 17, right? And I'll make X. I'll make a massive projected margin. right? But when cash becomes too hard, when they need money, they're going to have to unload those $17,000, $18,000 watches at $13,000, even for a $2,000 profit, which is still pretty damn good, right? But that's going to affect the entire market, because if one or two retailers show the actual value of these watches, show the actual trading price, everyone goes to shit. Again, vintage, not so much in danger. There are vintage watches that are in danger, but vintage as a whole, not so much. Pre-owned Rolex right now, scary game. Is it worth it to try to sell a freshly overhauled by Rolex 17,000 Oyster Quartz? Yeah, Oyster Quartzes are funny watches. Yes, I think that freshly serviced Oyster Quartzes are, for me, the only watches worth buying, because they can be such a pain in the ass if they're not freshly serviced. So yes, I guess the answer is, it's just a matter of can you get the right price. So it's kind of hard for me to, it's hard for me to, give you an answer if I don't know the details and how much you like it or how much you're in for it on, Isn't actual value based on what the market will pay? Yes, but what is the market? Is the market 15 guys? No. The market, you have to look at it, holistically. Just because 1 or 2 or 10 guys will buy Daytonas at super high prices does not mean the market is there. That means they overpaid. Now, if thousands of people now agree that the prices are at 16, 17, 18, now the prices are 16, 17, or 18, that's fine. But when it's a couple of dealers throwing up some crazy prices, that's the problem. And it's not my problem, but it is a problem. It's not going to end the world, but it's going to hurt people, What are your opinions on Ademar Piguet still being Holy Trinity member despite only focusing on Royal Oak models? Okay, Dylan Hall wants to know about my opinion surrounding AP still being considered a member of the Holy Trinity despite them really only having one watch, being the Royal Oak. I guess we have to answer that, we have to say, what makes you a Holy Trinity member? Does it mean you make the best watches in the world? If so, AP's out, right? Probably so is Patek, and so is Vacheron, right? Realistically, people who are, dealing in incredibly high-end watches, wouldn't they put Philippe Dufour? Wouldn't they put Lange over Patek? Realistically, I made a video not too long ago about really how much Lange has kicked the ass of Patek in the chronograph world, frankly, also in the time-only world, since 99. Or 90, 99 was the datograph. Yeah. Can you really compare the two companies? Now, Patek is significantly more important. Vacheron is probably more important. And so is AP, to be more important than A. Lange & Söhne and more important than Philippe Dufour. That's what it comes down to. Doesn't make them better. AP, the Royal Oak's a great watch. They've got it down to a science, though. It's a cash cow. It's not daring anymore. It's not inventive really anymore. But does that matter? Can AP really lose the spot? Like, what is the penalty? What does AP have to do to lose their spot? Because obviously they already only make one watch. But what does AP have to do? I don't know. It's a colloquial term anyway, the Holy Trinity. It's not a formal, Knights of the Holy Trinity. So they can't be kicked out. But it's a matter of you and I. The question is, generationally, will our grandkids view AP as one of the 3 most important watch brands ever? It comes down to marketing. The watches basically have nothing to do with it. I f***ing hate the offshore. Let's talk about Elvis's Omega. This is a watch that's hitting the Phillips block really soon, Lee. Really soon. Phillips found and is now selling, Elvis's diamond bezeled white gold Omega. The watch is not in great condition. In fact, I'd go so far to say the watch is in pretty bad condition, right? Given the dial has some pretty noticeable scratches on it. I think that the dial is a problem, right? But the question is, can Phillips create a stir around this watch to bring in a serious premium like they did around Paul Newman's Paul Newman? I think the answer is no. I think the answer is no because watches like this one, watches like Elvis's watch, forget Elvis, just the watch itself are not the watches that hit big numbers at auction. One, it's an Omega. An Omega, unless it's a chronograph, really does not bring in serious money at auctions. Number 2, it's a dress watch. It's not a Speedmaster, right? So it's got nothing to do with that lineage. Number 3, it's got diamonds. Most buyers, at least American buyers, to my understanding, are pretty much so turned off, by that bling. American buyers, and I mean, it's hard to say Italians too, because Italians like the bling too. Italians like bling, but it's sporty usually when they like bling. Italians like blingy Daytonas, not blingy, Omega dress watches, right? So putting away the provenance of the watch, putting that aside, the watch itself is not a recipe for success at auction. But can Phillips market it as so? That's the point here. I've seen nothing compelling online from Phillips on this watch. I've seen no real marketing material that I've said, fuck, that's cool. Like, I want to own this watch. Whereas with the Paul Newman Daytona, it was. Of course, we're talking about different levels of watches here. That's fine. But I'm not seeing that, not the same effort, but the same proportional effort. I'm actually not seeing any effort. So that's kind of interesting. Then again, I think, at least it's my understanding, that Elvis is a much more globally important figure than Paul Newman ever is or was. I could be wrong, it's just my impression. So, I mean, they've sold Elvis's hair at auction. I mean, they could sell the guy's toilet paper, for God's sakes. But will it work? Will the watch itself hit 100,000, 200,000? I have no idea. My bet is no. But what do I know? I would have never said 18 million for Paul Newman's Paul Newman. I never would have guessed that. So I guess I don't know. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Ask TNH. I will see you all tomorrow on Liquor Run. And you guys, I'll see you right now on Instagram when I post something really cool. Look at this.